you can be so creative, you know? Like, even if you're not good at, like, drawing. Like, I think creativity is something that's, like, way more broad than that.
Okay, so I'm decapitating my models.
Do it. You replace it with some other head that you found that you like.
Oh,
Maybe
that's a good idea.
Maybe the paper girl or something like that.
I like that. See, the creative. Goodness, there's so many bodies I can use.
You are using Vogue. But like finding your style as an artist or like as a creator is the same as like finding your strengths and weaknesses as a person. So like that like is on a grander scale, like knowing yourself like in and out as like who I am as a person, what qualities define me, and all this other stuff. Like that's just true as like in anything you create as well too. Where it's like, what are the things I want to focus on and capitalize on, and what are the things I'm good at in art and in creation. And then just do those things. Like for example, like you said, journalism is like you are a phenomenal writer, and you're very good at like talking to people, and probably you're very good at telling stories too, even if you like haven't figured out how you want to frame them yet. And
yeah, but then you see other people who are like really good, and they do really have. I think I know people say, "Oh, don't compare yourself with others," but like you, to a certain degree, you have to compare yourself.
But do we do that as people though? Like if I were to say like, "Oh, I'm a very patient person," and I pride myself on being patient, I could pull out someone who's very, very, very patient, and I'm not going to be like, "Oh, but I'm not patient anymore," because he's so much more patient than I am, you know? Like, no, like, you're still a very patient person, and that's a really good quality in yourself, and like, by the way, I'm not very patient, and people will still think you're patient, because you are, even if you're not the most patient person in the world.
Yes, but you're not on the job market for being patient. Like, you're on the job market for your creative skills, and I know that sounds so
more like, yeah, because it is more
earth,
tangible.
But like other people are going to compare you all the time.
There is that niche where it's kind of like, okay, well, if you can't be the most patient person in the world, then be the most patient and empathetic person in the world. Yeah. That was something that like a designer had told me. He was saying like basically, you're never going to be the best UX designer in the world, right? But if you're passionate about designing, and you're passionate about like say truck driving, for example, like very abstract example. This is the one he used. You can be the best UX designer for designing some sort of truck routes. Like merge your two intersections, because you're never going to be the best basketball player in the world, but you could be the best designer for basketball logos. You know, like it's you have to like mix some things to create like an avenue for yourself too. And I think that like that's what you would ideally want to do too, right? In design or anything creative, you can't just do it. You have to do it about something, right? Like I can't just design for the sake of designing. Like I still have to be designing something. So just design something you're passionate about. And create stories about something you're passionate about.
Like finding your niche. Yeah. That's a good point. Plus you like differentiate yourself. And I think it's hard to say, hi, I'm a designer.
Yeah.
There's so many people who are designers. But if you say, hi, I'm a designer and I have like these two interests.
Yes.
And so I've been doing design work around these two interests. I feel like people are going to be like,
Yeah, it is. It's unique. It's really cool to specialize in things too, I think.
That's another question though. I like have this perpetual need to not be an expert in something because I love being like a very broad person because I love doing a lot of different things. But I think, as you said, in order to really find your passion, sometimes you have to like go a certain level of depth.
I learned from this podcast, this guy was saying like do the 80-20 rule where you get 80% proficient or really good at something and then just leave the 20%. That's all you need. You can find someone else who's 100% good at Adobe Photoshop, you know, like you do not need to be 100% good at Adobe Photoshop. At a certain point, like those skills are limited. It's basically like an exponential curve where it's kind of like, do you really need that extra, and there's just not that much payoff there.
Well, Ira Glass, do you know Ira Glass? He's the host of This American Life. I read his book on how to get into broadcast journalism, and there's this like really famous interview with him, which he touched upon in the book, that's like, for the first 20 years, my content was absolute shit. And like, he knew it, his producers knew it, but he just kept going. And there's just like, there's a lot of failure you need to experience and get through in order to improve. And then by the 21st year, he was actually like producing content that was really powerful.
Yeah.
But like most of the people he was competing with in the job market had like stopped by then because they didn't want to do 20 years of like bad work.
Right.
So that's kind of like almost the requirement if you want to get good at something.
I almost feel like that's what happens when you're an actress and stuff like that as well. Obviously, like, the job market's a lot more narrow for that.
Yeah.
But, like, I feel like there's so many, like, starving artists type, like, tropes and stuff like that. But, I mean, it is about, like, honing in on your craft and being the best over time, you know? Like, like, you can have, like, I think we've talked about this before, but, like, you have, like, the pure talent or whatever, but there's also, like, learned talent.
Yeah, well, and again, like, you, I guess, want it enough. But I also think most people don't want to pursue their passions enough to, like, be, I don't know, go through 20 years of, like, hardship.
Yeah, I mean, it's
And to
also
be honest,
hard.
I'm not sure I'd be up for that, to be completely frank. I mean, like, what Ira Glass did, the fact that he, like, worked 80 hours a week, you know, for 20 years, and really no one listened to his content.
Yeah.
And then he succeeded. And I'm not saying he didn't have, like...
It's a timing thing, too. Because it's like your audience always... The audience is constantly changing, right?
Yeah.
Like, this year's, like, most trending things are not going to be next year's, and it wasn't the years before.
Well, that's the other thing. What if your passion doesn't have, like, its moment in history? Like, what if you weren't a Renaissance painter during the Renaissance time, but you were an abstract painter and then no one likes you?
Yeah.
Or, like, now tech is so big, but what if you're, like... No, I think there are some things that are now underappreciated, even though they weren't before. And it's not your fault. It's just, like, the time of life.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
It sucks.
And then also, in terms of, like, giving up and stuff, it's, like, it's so much easier to give up when you're someone who's, like, multi-talented. And if not, like, talented, at least, like, you're capable. Like, everyone's capable of doing multiple things, you know?
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
And I think that when you see other avenues, you're like, oh, I mean, like, I'm not succeeding. Like, I could be doing this. Then it's very easy to give up your passion, per se, if, like, something that's, like, easier and more, like, ready, like, more instantaneous gratification or whatever, you know, comes along.
Also, I think you can force yourself to, like,
to, like something?
Yeah.
You know? Or you just, like, learn to like it. And I think that that's something I realized. I think I talked to you about this over the summer, where it's kind of like, I was searching for so long for, like, my entire college career, basically, of, like, oh, I'm just going to take all these intro classes, and maybe one of them, all of a sudden, I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm passionate about, you know?
I found it.
You know, this is me. But that's not how passion's made, ever. Passion is, like, it's almost like love, where you, like, you can't just, like, love something. Love at first sight. Like, I guess for some people that might work, especially if you believe in it, you know? But for a lot of people, love is, like, learned.
Yeah.
And same with passions. Like, sometimes, like, you play a game when you're 4 and you, like, love it. You love it at first sight. And it's your passion for the rest of your life. But other times, you have to really learn your craft, get better at it, get into the space of it, and just do it over time. And I just learned to love it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard to do that, because you have to have a lot of patience and time. You gotta put a lot of heart and soul into that.
But maybe if you have that mindset, then it's easier to, like, deal with the failures, because you'll just know this is, like, a required thing that has to be done in order to get to where you are. It's like you have to go through these hoops, which happen to be, like, the hoops of failure.
But it's really tough, because it's like there's also no guarantee, just because you spend 20-something years on it, that this is going to turn into something, because, again, there's that timing factor as well. It's a lot of confidence. Like, you have to believe in yourself, and you have to be, to a certain degree, like, good at it as well.
So what do you think you need to be a good illustrator?
I think you need an open mind, creativity, and I think everyone has creativity. One of the biggest things I've really disliked and realized recently, disliked realizing recently, you know, when you're younger, and, like, when you're in 2nd grade and you go to art class, and you get told as a little kid that, like, oh, you can't draw, you're not creative, let's put you math and sciences, or something like that. People our age, every time I talk to them, they're like, oh, especially since I was in stats major, and I had a lot of friends who were, like, in stats or CS and stuff like that, they're like, oh, I'm not creative. Like, they just flat out say, like, I'm not creative at all. I think it's so sad because you can be so creative, you know? Like, even if you're not good at, like, drawing. Like, I think creativity is something that's, like, way more broad than that and also more encompassing. It's just thinking, it's just problem solving and thinking outside the box, coming up with a solution. And, like, you do, engineers are very creative. So it's crazy to me that, like, people who do math and science are creative. But anyway, I feel so sad when I think about kids who are just told they're not creative.
No, I totally agree. And I also think, like, and it's never considered a skill, but I think just also just a mindset you need to be in. If you want to, like, do creative work, I think you just got to do more creative work and get used to that idea of, like, thinking creatively. Like, when I was in Hungary, I did, like, way more creative work than I had ever done. And I guess I'm thinking of, like, traditional creative work too, but, like, I started writing stories, and, like, a lot of them are pretty weird. I wrote about this, like, from the perspective of trash in a city, and then, like, being, like, starting a socialist uprising within the city because they were always being, like, pushed away by the trash man or whatever. But, like, I think you just gotta, like, force yourself to start doing creative things, and then I think as a result you will be more creative. But people don't think of it as a creative or, like, as a skill set that you could hone.